Pepperdine's Max Lewis got off to a ridiculously hot start to his sophomore season and rightfully earned a ton of NBA draft attention as high as the lottery. While his second half was much bumpier, he still checks a ton of boxes for a wing in the modern NBA. He's a long 6'7", a good athlete that proved he can knock down shots, make things happen off the dribble, and had moments defensively in what was a definite work in progress on that end that he shouldn't fall too far from that early season hype. Now there are a few places we could start with Max's game, but I think we go with his 3-point shooting, where I'm still a buyer in him long term. I think he can still continue to get more consistent mechanically, but I like where he's at already. He's fluid, he shoots an easy ball, he gets it off quick, and has been effective in terms of his footwork, often off the hop or the left-right. Now he shot just 34% total on the year, but of his 134 attempts, just 59 of them came off of catch and shoot, and on those catch and shoot looks he was at 44%, which is obviously a great clip, and in the same neighborhood as guys like Julian Strawther and Bryce Sensabaugh, to name a few. And I honestly think had he gotten those easier looks within the flow of the offense, he would have shined and the overall percentages would have matched that a bit more. I do think some of his NBA success will be contingent upon what level he reaches as a shooter, but I'd be willing to take what I believe to be a relatively safe bet on him here because of what he showed both in terms of percentages and mechanically throughout the year.
All of it in the first 3.5 minutes. Jan Zedek over to Maxwell Lewis, and Lewis.
There's a lot to like with Max Lewis in terms of scoring and creation potential, especially in that complementary or secondary type of role. I think it'll be tougher for him to be that primary guy, but in a situation where things are simplified for him and he grows from there, I think he could really shine. So we're talking a lot of second side actions, attacking closeouts, playing off of those pin downs, and then going to create a bucket on his own. Now he's not the quickest, but he's got a solid first step and really long strides and does an excellent job of using those to his advantage and playing with his defender's momentum. He got a lot better as a driver over the course of the season, whether it was against those shifted defenses or more creating that advantage on his own. He was able to work his way through the lane and finish at a high rate, which was great to see considering how many post up and gimme buckets were a part of his sort of scoring profile earlier in the year. And when you look at it, all of this stuff is easily translatable to that off-ball secondary score type of role, especially with the spot-up shooting that we already talked about.
Waves get the rebound. It's down the lane. Lewis lands.
Trying to get Zedek going. Kick to the corner. Now it's Lewis. That's what he did.
Like the last few possessions offensively, so he tried to settle his team down with that timeout. But
They all got to shoot. That's right.
Bags up by 10. Lewis the drive.
And it's 6-2 Tigers with 17-14 remaining down the lane.
He's also got some real upside off the bounce. He shot 34% on off the dribble jumpers, which is a solid clip at the college level, believe it or not. And it's hard not to be impressed by the pieces here, from the jab series to the step backs going left, all being set up by those long strides, to the right to left crossovers that he loved to use, the way he used his body, length, and footwork to get a good look in the mid-range. And then my favorite, these sort of live hang dribble pullbacks somewhere in the Harden, Luka, LeBron family. He's got some stuff to him. Now, the shot selection could still be a little wild, but have to patch up a few other things with the ball in his hand before you're giving him that full freedom down the line. But I think there's enough there to pour into, and when you match it with what he can do as a spot shooter, athlete, and attacking on those second side actions, you've got a lot of reasons to be intrigued with his ability to put the ball in the basket.
Here's an assistant for Riley Wallace back in the day. It's Maxwell Lewis.
The Heat defensively. Here's Lewis. Working on Vancouver's best defender, Spencer Johnson.
The zone is not all that effective for Pepperdine.
Lewis got to the baseline, reversed it up and good. Oregon. Jaquez with his production, but maybe more importantly, his leadership.
Garnering 9 assists on 19 made baskets.
3 minutes to play, under 10 to shoot, step back.
Maxwell Lewis, step back three, this is big.
Lewis left side with the dribble.
Biggest lead has been 14. Mismatch there, Porter against Shelton. Lewis weaving through traffic in his shot.
Gonzaga bench wanting a foul there. Here's Maxwell Lewis. Colton chasing. Lewis lost it on the way up. And
West Conference. Man-to-man defense by the Lumberjacks. It goes inside to Lewis. Fall away, 12-foot jumper.
He's going to do that every night on single coverage.
And Lewis now on the post against Stropple off the glass.
The baseline spinning into fadeaway.
One of the areas I felt like he grew the most this year was as a passer and playmaker. Now, he's not the most advanced guy in this respect and needs to clean up the turnovers, and we'll get to some of that in a minute, but I was impressed by his abilities to find his teammates off his own drives and creation, make the basic reads off a ball screen and make the extra pass or right play in a lot of other situations, which, when we're talking about a complimentary piece at the next level, this is the type of stuff that you want to see. And really, that progression from year 1 to year 2 was significant enough to give me confidence in him here going forward and kind of live with some of the growing pains and mistakes along the way.
And the waves from Max Lewis, driving, throws it out to Mike Mitchell Jr. He's open. 3-point shot is
Those are
good.
the shots they're going to make.
Lewis, bash him. Nice finish.
Now, moving on to the improvement areas, Max has obvious potential defensively, but he still left a lot to be desired, both at the point of attack and in his awareness and impact playing off of the ball. Now, I do feel like there was progress made from what I saw from him as a freshman, but there were still way too many moments where he'd fall asleep or start ball watching and get back cut, or just lose his man for long enough to give up an advantage somewhere on the court. And you throw in moments standing straight leg, dying on screens without getting back into the play, or just offering little resistance out on the perimeter. You have someone who just wasn't great on this end. Now, this Pepperdine team left a lot to be desired as an entire unit. I feel like in a different situation where the structure and supporting pieces are different, and he also makes this more of a priority. Could have gone much differently at the college level, and that's part of the case to be made with him heading to the NBA, because he is still 6'7" with long arms. He can move his feet. He had moments of playing passing lanes. He's got the tools, and we've seen it from him, but it's got to be way more consistent, and he's got to cut out as many of these fixable lapses as possible, and then we can work from there, because this is a key area that will likely determine how quickly and how often he sees the floor throughout his career.
He's turned it up a little bit, though, haven't they? Speeding him up a little bit. Those shots aren't as comfortable as they were early in the game.
On the drive, Jovan McClanahan tries to split a double team, and
Trips down the floor. There's the Ohio State transfer, Arms.
A while under the new head coach. Here's the ball taken away by Lewis. Pepperdine forced the turnover. Mitchell the lob to Lewis.
a little over a mile, about 1.25 miles to the closest beach from here where we're at right now. And I think
Rather early. Right side, this is Akamento with the dribble. 5 on the shot clock. Akamento's jumping.
Hunter Salas will drive on Lewis. Mitchell.
Now, there's still some tightening to be done in his overall decision making, including the shot selection that we touched on earlier. But the biggest thing for him here is cutting back on the turnovers. He had a tendency of playing sped up at times. He'd make some tougher drives into traffic. The ball security was inconsistent with the handle. He had more than his share of travels off the catch, and he'd get a bit ambitious with some of his passing attempts as well, and it just led to too many mistakes. Now, I have a bit less of an issue with some of those passes because sometimes he had the right idea or process and it just didn't go his way. But 12 games with more than 4 turnovers on a season and averaging around 4.5 for the last month just can't happen, especially for someone who doesn't project as a real lead ball handler or high usage playmaker. So taking care of and valuing the basketball more should be one of his main priorities offensively in those specific spots that we talked about. And then I feel like we can mention this with a lot of prospects, but I think he can continue to add to his frame and get a bit stronger. I actually think he is a bit stronger than he looks, and he held up well functionally on both ends of the floor. But heading to that next level, it'll only make the game easier and give him more versatility, primarily defensively. And then the foul trouble, it wasn't anywhere near like a Jaren Jackson type of issue or anything like that, but he was at nearly 3 a game. He had 4 or more in 11 contests, and there were times where it made it tougher for him to get into a flow and it kept him out of some games. So just being a little smarter in certain situations, doing that work a little earlier to not be on the recovery should help ease some of that. Now, I probably still take Max Lewis in the top 20, but my safest guess is he lands somewhere from the late teens to the late 20s on draft night. And in terms of projection, I think he can be like a middle tier starter in this league, someone who spaces the floor and fills a lot of gaps for teams on the wing, in best case, making some type of impact on both ends of the floor. Like we mentioned earlier, him reaching that ceiling will strongly be moved by how good he is defensively and the level shooter he can become, but it's hard not to see him being some level of contributor in a rotation at the very least. Comparison wise, there are a lot of similarities between he and Devin Vassell to me, but the gap on the defensive end makes that one just a little tougher to love, but I still like it enough. And then a guy like Jeremy Lamb came to mind as well. It's a long wing, high talent offensively, kind of up and down on defense from UConn throughout his NBA career. I feel like there's a little Trey Murphy in there too, but as always, these comps are never a one-to-one thing. Everybody's unique. It's just kind of a look at some of the similarities and potential roles they could play at the next level. A 6'7" wing who is a solid athlete and showed real upside as a shooter and second side creator, and also has the tools to be passable defensively, is going to be tough to turn down for too long on draft night. Now, he's got some work to do to maximize his game. It may take a little time, but the talent is there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he even exceeds expectations wherever he lands.
I believe God can see us before he send us up. And I don't know about you, but he made men of us. Yeah, this is all on me. From the west side, LOV.